Where should capital gains go? There has been much discussion on capital gains tax, particularly in the context of sale of shares. Foreign institutional investors are set to pay even higher tax coming April, and many have pointed this out. The contrast is with countries like China and even America, where overseas portfolio investors don't pay tax on sale of shares. Both, by the way, have a vibrant market for investors. It's quite clear now, though it may not have been a few months ago, that foreign portfolio investors play an important role in bringing in capital backed with generally good quality research, which means it's not just about funds, but also where those funds go. This creates a virtuous cycle of sorts of good companies on Indian stock markets whose stock prices do well and others follow. So the question is, should India be reducing taxes, which are high in any case? And if so, what are the arguments for it? I spoke with Ketan Dalal, founder of Catalyst Advisors and former All India Joint Tax Head and Managing Partner West, as well as member of PwC's India leadership team. And I began by asking him how he was seeing the path for capital gains tax at this point going forward.
So, the point is, Govind, just let's step back, look at the bigger picture. I was just looking at some numbers, and US at 30 trillion in terms of market cap and China at 6 trillion roughly constitute about 80% of global market cap. And obviously, India is obviously very small compared to that, although it is pretty important now. Now, US does not levy, capital gains tax on listed equity on a cross-border basis, and nor does China. Now, if investors have to have a choice, and of course, China has its own set of issues, but if investors have a choice, Govind, logically, they will look at the fact that there is no capital gains tax in those economies. And therefore, if you see from a parity perspective or a level playing field, not from our perspective, but from their perspective, they will look at this as an issue which discourages them to some extent. Also, let's bear in mind that the rupee depreciation and the risks of investing in India would be, of course, the gains would also be higher, but the risks are also higher. And we have all seen in the last 3 months the carnage that has happened. So, they are also facing those risks. So, these are the issues that they will look at. And therefore, from their point of view, the capital gains is a dampener. And remember, the capital gains tax, by the way, is going up on April 1 from roughly 11.5%, 12% to roughly 14% because of the amendment made in the budget on 23rd July.
So, who all does that affect?
It will affect everybody, but it will also affect FPIs. The 10% plus surcharge rate is going up from to 12.5% plus surcharge is the point I'm trying to make.
Right. And this has been an issue in the past, but usually, I guess, because when markets are doing well, people don't bring this up. And it's becoming now more pronounced because markets are going down. So, do you feel maybe there is some sort of balance which could be there? Because if people are consistently asking or highlighting this problem, then it's a real problem. But if it's only highlighted when the markets are going down, then one would wonder whether it's more an issue of patience, which is not there.
Honestly, as I said, the market going down has heightened this issue. There's no doubt about it. So it's like saying that as it is, my gain has reduced, and on top of that, I'm paying tax on the reduced gain. Because in my head, I computed the gain as an X, and now it suddenly looks like, X minus 30, for example. So yes, it is there. But I think, as I said, Govind, on a step back basis, if you look at the bigger picture, when about 80% of global market cap does not have this capital gain, they will look at this as an issue. So what I was, sort of pondering was that maybe the government could consider that if not the doing away with capital gains tax, maybe not at least have it as a 15 kind of percent, more or less the rate which will be after April 1. It could be lower, and perhaps it could be computed in, foreign currency terms. Because if you look at FPI Govind when they started, okay, which was 1992, remember this was a year after the industrial policy. That time, the dollar was 25 rupees. It had actually been sort of devalued from 17 to 25. Today, of course, we are at 87. So every year on an average, on a sort of negative CAGR kind of concept, it has depreciated by about 3.5 to 4%, which is the differential rate of inflation more or less between India and the US. Now, therefore, if at least with a lower rate, if the gain could be computed in foreign currency, it would perhaps address some part of that issue also. I think because that's an important point, computing of gains in foreign currency, which is not so today.
Right. And let me ask a sort of more merit based question. Why do some countries not have taxes on foreign portfolio investors investing in their country? Like you mentioned, China and the US. and why do others have? And then, as they do, shouldn't it be driven by parity with domestic investors versus, let's say, foreign to foreign?
You are right. There is a merit in saying that why discriminate against our own residents. But I guess, Govind, that it is primarily being driven by the larger overriding sort of factor of wanting to attract investors. And I mentioned, right, that, US is about, say, 22, 23% of global GDP, but 70% or 65 to 70% of global market cap now. And there is a lot of foreign investment flowing into the US. Of course, there's a huge amount of domestic investment as well. China, on the other hand, also attract foreign portfolio investors. It has, of course, had its own set of issues. And in spite of that, if it wants to attract, then perhaps that has been an overriding consideration. There are, of course, certain economies we do have those taxes. So, for example, Indonesia has 5% on gross proceeds here, which I find a little strange. But we must also remember that if we are comparing with, let's say, a China as opposed to an Indonesia, I mean, my sense, Govind, is that FPIs would compare like a China-India kind and less an Indonesia-India kind. So I think that's an important consideration as well.
Are we only talking about long-term capital gains, or you feel that's where the debate should be, or does short-term also come in, or
Long-term and short-term both, because remember, FPIs do tend to sort of pull out money. So maybe they could look at long-term at least as being exempt and short, because otherwise the volatility of flows could be impacted. But I think there is a case at least for reduction, if not removal, and there is a case for considering in forex terms. I think these are the two at least as an alternative to reduction.
And I guess the way government see it is that, we've had a phenomenal run in the last 4 years. Markets have shot up dramatically. There's a lot of wealth that's been created, including through exits. Tens of thousands of crores have been made. 100 crore apartments have been bought. So someone should pay. And that's the way the government or the tax department would see it. And particularly this last 3, 4 years. How would you address their concern or their thought process here?
It is a valid concern. There is no doubt about it. The only point is that from an FPI perspective, they look at it not from the distinguish between domestic and FPI. So you said, on par, resident to non-resident, or from their perspective. See, I think logic from our perspective should only be this. If we want them to come in, and this is going to be dissuading, do we want them even at the cost of giving away some revenue or not? I think that is going to be the key driver for that decision. And I think perhaps the midway answer is reduction and computing in forex, because completely doing away is something which may be difficult for the government to take a call. Although if they really want to be on parity with China, I don't think there's a choice. Perhaps look at only the long term and not the short term. Insofar as domestic is concerned, you talked about 100 crore apartments, etc. So there are 2 points there go with. One is we also have to realize that the last 3 years has been an aberration insofar as mid cap and small cap is concerned. Remember that the large caps, many of them have not moved at all for 3 years. A lot of money has been made because of FPI, partly FPI inflows, but a lot of domestic inflows as well. I don't think that one is going to see anywhere near that kind of a move in the next 3-4 years. So one has to look at this going more on a going forward basis as opposed to what has happened in the last 3 years, which I think has been a substantial aberration.
And what do you feel is the amount that the government could forego if they were to not collect this capital gains tax on foreign portfolio investment, roughly?
I tried to find out what is the collection on FPI. I couldn't do that. But I did find out that about long-term capital gain on listed equity collection is about 98,000 crores in FY 23-24, something like that. Say 1 lakh crores. I don't have a handle on the number, Govind, but I suspect that the FPI could have been 30-40,000 crores maybe. So yes, is it substantial? It is substantial. I don't think it'll be more than that, but yes, it is substantial to that extent. And we are only talking of long-term numbers, right?
So we also had a new tax bill recently, which was the outcome of many months of deliberations, negotiations, 66 subcommittees, and so on. What's your sense as we now look at it?
Govind, the listeners and the viewers in the core report are quite sophisticated, and I'm sure they are aware of it, but I do want to clear one misconception. The new income tax bill, honestly, is simply a renumbering. And if the expectation is that because of this, and a layman, or even a Govindra Jithiraj will be able to make some sense by reading it, it is not going to happen because, you might, instead of using the word provided that, you may say notwithstanding, but that's neither here nor there. It's not going to move the needle. 150 officers spending 60,000 man hours on this exercise, if I put it mildly, is completely unjustified and the outcome is nowhere near what it should be. Honestly, what we require is a redevelopment, at least in certain baskets, not just a restoration or a renovation, let alone a housekeeping. And I think what has happened is this is a housekeeping exercise. You have so many provisions in the Income Tax Act which are completely unaligned to today's reality and sometimes even yesterday's reality. And some of those issues need to be addressed. Unfortunately, this renumbering kind of thing, when I honestly think it's a renumbering, there's hardly any change. There are one or two changes. In fact, some of those changes say, okay, I can access your laptop, etc. So in a sense, they are sort of more draconian, if I might put it that way. But on the substantive basis, there's no change.
And what's an illustration of where you felt there could be change or there was a perception that there would be change, but it has not happened?
I was not explicit. The mandate of the committee itself, now Govind, the mandate was, simplify language, get rid of redundant provisions. So honestly, there was no expectation. But if I were to distinguish between expectation and hope, at least the hope was that there are 4 or 5, then these are just illustrations. There will be many that could be addressed. So let's look at, for example, ESOP taxation. For years and years, there has been a representation that you cannot tax ESOP at the point of exercise because that is not the stage of monetization. You may compute the tax at that stage, but defer it to the stage of monetization. That has not happened. There are so many provisions relating to, let's say, mergers and acquisitions, which is a very critical activity today, which are out of sync with reality. Let me give you one example. If a manufacturing company which is making a loss merges into another company, the loss of that manufacturing company is allowed to be set off. But what about an NBFC? Because when the law was framed, it's a section called 72A COVID. I don't think they even envisaged that a service company or let's say an NBFC company could have a loss because there were not that many NBFCs, for example, at that point of time. Now let's see what happened with IRFS. Point I'm trying to make is many of these provisions need a change. They badly need a change. And many of these changes are not being done in spite of repeated representation. Those provisions are drafted in a different era. Today we are in a different era. So I don't think the new income tax bill will help. And my other worry, Govind, is the fear is that the government will say, but I've just made a new act. And why are you coming to a representation? Let's say come February 2026 budget. Okay. Representations will start in October. If this bill is introduced, they'll say, but I just changed it. But you didn't. What you've done is a renumbering. It's not a change. So I don't want to sound sort of an overkill on this, but this is the reality of the issue, frankly.
Ketan, thank you so much for joining me. As always, a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you, Govind. It's been a pleasure being with you at the Core Report. Thank you so much.